Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the life, the philosophy, and the massive historical impact of Lucy Parsons. We're talking about one of the most prominent, absolutely uncompromising, and, according to historical sources, deeply feared labor organizers in American history. Through the sources we're exploring today, we're going to unpack exactly how a formerly enslaved woman became a leading figure in the radical anarchist movement, a founder of the industrial workers of the world, and a speaker whose words were considered so incredibly dangerous that the state literally confiscated her writings from the ashes of her home after she died. Now, to really grasp the sheer intensity of her worldview, like this powerful quote from 1905, where she bluntly states that women are the slaves of slaves, we have to look at the extreme conditions she actually lived through. You see, she didn't just arrive at these conclusions in a vacuum. They were the direct, unfiltered result of the life she led. So here is our roadmap for today. First, the Goddess of Anarchy. Second, the Haymarket turning point. Third, the principles of anarchism. Fourth, direct action and tactics. And finally, we'll wrap up with a controversial, lasting legacy. All right, let's jump right in. Section 1. The Goddess of Anarchy and the making of a radical. Her personal timeline was essentially on a collision course with the crushing poverty of 1870s Chicago. Born into slavery in Texas back in 1853, she eventually moved to Chicago in 1873 with her husband, Albert. Now, they arrived right in the middle of a nationwide economic depression, and her true introduction to the so-called labor question happened during the massive railroad strikes of 1877. She started organizing purely out of necessity. She actually helped establish the Working Women's Union to advocate for equal pay for domestic servants and seamstresses. But as a disenfranchised Black woman who already had zero faith in electoral politics, she quickly grew completely disillusioned with these minor union reforms. She wasn't looking for a bandage. She was seeking a radical, ground-up reorganization of society.
Which brings us to our next chapter. Section 2. The Haymarket turning point, the ultimate crucible.
Imagine this. It's May 4th, 1886. A labor gathering is called in Chicago's Haymarket Square to discuss police brutality against striking workers. As the police move in to break up the crowd, an unknown person throws a bomb, which prompts the police to shoot aimlessly into the crowd. In the chaotic aftermath, her husband, Albert Parsons, along with several other anarchist leaders, are arrested. They were ordered to be hanged for allegedly inciting the crowds, a conviction that our sources note occurred despite a total lack of evidence tying them to the bombing itself. This specific event, which she naturally viewed as a profound, unforgivable injustice, permanently shifted her philosophy. It was a complete 180. Prior to this, she wrote that she was a sincere political socialist who actually believed the government could be made into an instrument to alleviate suffering. But her husband's execution by the state convinced her, once and for all, that government was simply concentrated power wielded by the few at the expense of the many. She turned entirely away from political reform, demanding instead the absolute, total abolition of the state.
Let's move on to Section 3, the principles of anarchism, or stateless socialism.
Now, it's really important to note how she defined anarchism. She didn't see it as chaos or street violence, but as a highly cooperative society completely free of centralized, coercive authority. She fundamentally believed that humanity is naturally cooperative and its society should just be regulated by voluntary agreements. In her view, governments never actually lead progress, they only follow it. And worse, they use their legalized force to invade personal liberty and protect the possessing class.
This idea really hits the nail on the head regarding her core economic beliefs. She argued that nature's resources belong to absolutely everyone, and that government laws merely protect the hoarded property of the ruling class. To her, property as an absolute right to abuse or hoard resources had to be abolished. It would be replaced simply by possession and use. She envisioned a world where the vast wealth produced by modern machinery was shared by all, which would reduce everyone's daily labor to just a few hours a day.
All right, Section 4, direct action and tactics, moving the working class. Because she believed the ruling class would never just hand over their power peacefully, she pushed for direct physical action. In 1905, she co-founded the Industrial Workers of the World. Standing right there before the convention, she delivered a passionate, fiery directive to the working class. Recognize your collective power, step forward, and physically seize what you produce.
Her tactical vision was frankly way ahead of its time. She flat out rejected politicians, she championed women as the most exploited workers of all, and, remarkably, she pioneered the idea of the sit-in strike decades before it became a common tactic. Her message was incredibly clear. Don't strike and starve outside on the picket line, stay inside and take actual possession of the property. But we also have to look objectively at her most extreme rhetoric. In an 1884 article addressed directly to Chicago's starving unemployed, she argued that peaceful petitions would only ever be met with police bullets. So she famously wrote, "Learn the use of explosives." It was exactly this kind of uncompromising militancy that deeply, genuinely terrified authorities at the time. Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, a controversial, lasting legacy and how the state responds. As detailed in our sources, anarchism at the turn of the century wasn't just a local issue. It was a massive international movement that directly threatened the physical well-being of the ruling class. Following a wave of global expropriations and assassinations, which even included the assassination of U.S. President William McKinley by an anarchist in 1901, President Teddy Roosevelt and the U.S. government clamped down hard. To combat the very real threats posed by figures like Parsons, they established powerful, unprecedented cross-border institutions to monitor and suppress radicalism. And these are the very institutions that would eventually become the FBI. Fast forward to March 1942. Parsons tragically died in a house fire. Yet the state still viewed her as such a severe political threat that police literally showed up at the ashes of her home to confiscate and destroy her extensive library and surviving writings, effectively erasing much of her life's work from history.
So, as you reflect on the incredible, highly complex life of Lucy Parsons, from an enslaved child in Texas to one of the most feared radicals in Chicago, I want you to consider this final thought. How exactly does the legacy of a radical movement survive when the history is written and the archives are controlled by the very structures those movements sought to completely dismantle? It's a fascinating question about memory, power, and who gets to write history. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the history you've been taught.